7 German fighters appear above him in tight formation, wings glinting as they slide out of the sun. His fuel gauge trembles at critical, the needle resting where red paint begins. His radio is dead. The cockpit's silent, except for the steady vibration of the Merlin engine and the hiss of wind past the canopy seams. He does not turn away. He does not dive. He holds altitude and waits. The lead Messerschmitt moves in, ready to strike, rolling into attack mode. Still, he waits. What the enemy pilots cannot see is that this American has been counting seconds since they first appeared, and in his mind the trap has already closed. It is the spring of 1944, and the air war over Western Europe has become a grinding arithmetic of attrition. Every morning, long streams of American bombers carve white contrails across the skies of occupied France and Belgium. Below those trails lie the scars of previous missions, fields cratered by wreckage, forests marked by burned aluminum and blackened soil. The 8th Air Force's bleeding crews faster than training commands can replace them. Every time a factory goes down, countless guys just disappear into flames, freezing water, or get caught behind enemy lines. It's heartbreaking, right? Fighter escorts push farther each week. The P-51 Mustang has finally given American pilots the range to reach deep into Germany, but distance introduces unforgiving problems. Fuel management becomes a daily calculation of survival. Navigation errors become fatal mistakes. Fatigue compounds judgment. Meanwhile, German fighter tactics evolve constantly. The Luftwaffe no longer rushes headlong into bomber formations. They watch. They wait. They allow the stream to pass, study escort behavior, then strike the damaged, the isolated, and the undisciplined. This method totally works because it plays on our human weaknesses, not on what planes can do. Pilots who wander even slightly from formation become targets. Escorts that chase kills abandon their duty. Every loss feeds the German calculus. 1 bomber destroyed is 10 men gone. 1 escort distracted is an opening. In this war, patience is as lethal as aggression, and the enemy has learned to use both with equal effect. At Rafdebdun, in Essex, the 4th Fighter Group operates from a former Royal Air Force station, whose concrete still holds moisture from English winters. The smell of aviation fuel blends with the earthy scent of oil and damp grass, creating a unique vibe that just hits differently. Ground crews work through the night patching bullet holes, replacing glycol lines, and salvaging what can still fly. Intelligence officers are busy updating chalkboards, watching those loss rates climb higher and higher. Pilots glance at those boards, staying silent, fully aware of what those numbers mean. It's like they share a secret language, right? Morning briefings are quiet affairs. Maps are marked rote stressed, flat concentrations noted. German airfields circled in grease, pencil. Each pilot knows the statistics without being reminded. 1 in 4 will not complete a tour. 1 in 10 may not return from today's mission. It is not spoken aloud, but it is understood by everyone in the room. Among the pilots sits a man who rarely draws attention. He speaks little at briefings, and never interrupts. He does not boast in the officers' mess or retell dogfights with exaggerated flair. He listens. He calculates. When others talk about instinct, he talks about timing. When others describe luck, he describes preparation. His name is Robert S. Johnson, and by the spring of 1944 he has survived what most pilots do not. Ground crews know Johnson as the pilot who brings his aircraft back shredded beyond belief. Wings riddled, fuselage torn, engine coughing, yet still airborne. Armorers know him as the man who counts every round fired, tracking ammunition expenditure with accountant precision. Intelligence officers know him as the pilot whose combat reports read like engineering notes, sparse and exact, free of emotion or embellishment. He does not fit the romantic image of a fighter ace, and he does not try to. Robert Samuel Johnson was born in Lawton, Oklahoma, in 1920, a place defined by dust, wind, and open horizons. His father operated a small garage, and Johnson grew up surrounded by engines and tools. He learned early that machines obeyed rules, whether you respected them or not. Carburetors did not care about confidence. Timing chains did not forgive neglect. If something failed, it was because a principle had been violated. This mindset shaped how he saw the world. Johnson was not a natural athlete and never pretended to be one. He was not especially outgoing. He preferred manuals to novels and diagrams to conversation. He understood systems instinctively. When he looked at an airplane, he didn't see romance or freedom at all. Instead, he saw a big metal bird just flying through the sky. He saw airflow, fuel flow, stress points, and failure modes. To him, flying was not an art. It was a controlled experiment with lethal consequences for error. In 1941, Johnson enlisted in the Army Air Corps. Patriotism mattered, but curiosity mattered more. Flying always amazed him, just like those roaring engines did when he was a kid. It was physics made visible, geometry enacted at hundreds of miles per hour. Training instructors noticed something unusual almost immediately. Johnson definitely wasn't smooth. And let's be real, he wasn't quick either. But he was precise to an unsettling degree. He calculated fuel burn mentally. He estimated altitude loss in turns within feet. One instructor wrote that Johnson flew like an engineer pretending to be a pilot. Other cadets relied on feel and intuition. Johnson relied on measurement. Where others reacted instinctively, he paused to confirm. This made him slower in training, but infinitely more consistent. He didn't just push limits for the fun of it. He dove deep to really understand where those boundaries were and what they meant. When he graduated and shipped to England in early 1943, he arrived with hours in his logbook and a reputation for being methodical to the point of discomfort. In England, Johnson studied everything. He read after-action reports instead of drinking. He interviewed returning pilots about German tactics. He sketched engagement geometries in a notebook he carried everywhere. Other pilots thought him odd, even cold, but none thought him careless. His first aerial victories came quietly in the summer of 1943. Short bursts, clean angles, no wasted ammunition. He disengaged immediately and returned to escort duty without comment. As months passed, Johnson learned something many pilots never would. Appearing vulnerable could be a weapon. Looking weak could draw an enemy into overconfidence. Overconfidence bred assumption, and assumption created openings. It required discipline to wait while danger closed in, especially when instinct screamed to act. Johnson really worked hard to fight that urge. He figured out that letting the enemy make the first move was the way to go. That discipline would be tested on a mission in April 1944, escorting heavy bombers to a synthetic oil plant near Leipzig. The briefing was routine. Route, altitude, expected resistance, fuel calculations. Johnson's flight launched at dawn for P-51 Mustangs carrying full internal fuel and underwing drop tanks. Broken clouds were hanging around, hinting that trouble was on the way. Visibility was decent, but that just meant danger was lurking nearby. They formed up over the English coast and crossed the North Sea, engines humming with practiced precision. Far ahead, bomber formations droned eastward. Silver specks against the sky, Johnson's flight took position several thousand feet above, scanning constantly. The first German attacks came from high sun, fighters diving through the escorts and slashing pop. Johnson engaged briefly, drove one attacker away, then reset his position without chasing. Combat maneuvering burned through fuel way quicker than expected. Johnson noticed the shift, but didn't freak out. The bombers reached the target. Bombs fell. Flak rose. 2 fortresses went down. Another limped, engine feathered, falling behind. Johnson's flight slid back to cover it. Radios started going down, one after another, until even Johnson Essa went silent. Silence followed instantly. The most dangerous condition of all, 30 miles from the French border. The Germans showed Up-7 Messerschmitt, 109s flying in loose formation, staying level. They paced the Americans, watching. Johnson felt no surge of fear. His hands remained light on the controls. He counted spacing, closure rates, angles. These were experienced pilots. They were waiting for panic. Johnson flapped his wings, giving the signal for everyone to stay tight and hold their ground. Time, ticket, bye, and the German formation wobbled a bit. Still, no attack came. Johnson saw what they were doing. They were reading fuel states, watching for weakness, waiting for one American to break. One of Johnson's buddies stepped forward without thinking. Johnson shot him a look. Stay put. Johnson caught sight of it. The lead Messerschmitt dipped down a bit, 5 degrees. Now that's some serious dedication, right? The formation began to spread into attack geometry. That was the mistake. The Germans assumed patience meant fear. They assumed silence meant uncertainty. Johnson flipped upside down and swooped straight at the leader like a HAWK. Head this way, not that way. Airspeed surged past 400 knots. The Germans broke hard, but too late. Johnson fired a 2-second burst. 50 caliber rounds tore through the Messerschmitt. The canopy shattered. The fighter snapped into a spin and fell away. Johnson never watched it crash. He quickly turned around and jumped right back into the action, ready to fight. The remaining Germans hesitated. Fuel mattered to them too. Two broke off. Another disengaged. When Johnson appeared beneath him again, the geometry collapsed. What had been 7 hunters became 3 uncertain survivors. Johnson stayed between them and the bomber until they withdrew. His fuel gauge glowed red. He quickly veered to an emergency field, just managing to land with barely enough fuel to roll away safely. When he shut down the engine, his hands were steady. His breathing was calm. He filed his report in plain language. He just gave a super straightforward answer about how he pulled it all together. He waited until they made a mistake. Gun camera footage confirmed 2 kills. Analysts studied the engagement. Johnson had not reacted. He had predicted. His dive had been an intercept, not an escape. Wheat in weeks. His method was being taught. Let them make their move. Strike the leader and break their line. Johnson finished the war with 27 confirmed victories. The number mattered less to him than the result. Fewer bombers lost, fewer crews dead. He returned home quietly and lived quietly. But those who flew with him remembered the lesson he proved again and again. Patience is like a secret weapon, you know. Timing really matters. And sometimes, just being quiet can be the most dangerous move of all.